In the afternoon session of the Commission of Inquiry, Attorney Edwards Fitzgerald continued to question his client, Premier Honorable Michael Mizik, for further clarification of previous answers. He said he stood by evidence given for most of the items previously given. Following this, attorney for the Crown, Alex Menn, decided to further question the Premier on several items. The first being the code of speech the Premier made following the announcement of the Commission of Inquiry, when he said that he had introduced and accepted various pieces of legislation, including a Minister of Government's Code of Conduct. The Premier said he was correct in making that statement, as he had. But Mr. Menn insisted that it was not enforced, it could not be counted. However, the Premier stuck by the fact that he had put that piece of legislation to the Cabinet. Moving on, Menn questioned the Premier once again on the matter of spending of the Tourist Board. He asked the Premier if he was responsible for the spending or was it just a board decision. The Premier said that the board had a budget and they were responsible for the spending. Menn then asked about the scholarships that were authorized by the Premier, asking if this authorization should not have come from the minister. The Premier replied that the minister brought it to him and so he signed it. Moving on to another matter, Menn referred to the sale of a parcel of land off Grace Bay at the back of the Grace Bay Plaza, for which he said $95,000 was sent to one of the Premier's bank accounts by a Jeanette Varela. He asked why was this done. The Premier explained that Ms. Varela is a friend of his who had decided to purchase the land behind his plaza to combine the properties for a joint venture. Mr. Menn, however, insisted on finding out why the money was placed in the Premier's account and not in the lawyer's. The Premier said because they were friends and he had paid it out later. Mr. Menn said there was no record of his First Caribbean bank account to which the funds had not been placed, nor any other account showing a movement of this amount. The Premier promised to check into this matter to find out where the funds came from and would get back to the Commission. Menn questioned the Premier on planning, noting that the chairman of the Planning Board tendered his resignation, stated that he could not continue when their decisions are being challenged and overturned. This resignation, he said, was handed in 4 days ago and was directly related to the last meeting, which he did not attend in December, for the discussion of the land development on the dock on Salt Cay. Mr. Menn stated that the Premier called this meeting, but the Premier stressed that he simply suggested a meeting. Mr. Menn asked who are the contractor for this project, which the Premier admitted as the Salt Cay Development Company as part of their $6 million agreement to put $3 million into the much-needed Salt Cay dock development. Then the bombshell of the day came with the revelation that the Premier says he also holds a private pilot license. This came during discussion about the planned purchase of a jet for the government of the Turks and Caicos Islands. The Premier said that he had looked at a plane. Mr. Menn said that it went a little further with a contract being drawn up, but the Premier maintains that he did not sign anything, therefore it was not a contract. Mr. Menn responded by asking about the company that was contracted by the government for the lease of an aircraft, Indigo Transportation. He then submitted that the company is ran by Jeffrey Watson, asking the Premier if this is a political ally. The Premier stated that Mr. Watson is a friend. Mr. Menn contended that Mr. Watson also assisted in setting up the Algora Conference and received belonger status. The Premier said that Mr. Watson has helped the country greatly, even in saving the government money in certain instances. Mr. Menn then asked the Premier when it was discussed that Mr. Watson should buy the plane and then lease it to the country. The Premier said there was never such a discussion. Mr. Menn then stated that he believes the Premier brought the plane for his friend and then leased it to the country. The Premier stated here that Mr. Watson borrowed the money and brought the plane and offered it on lease. The amount quoted for the lease of the aircraft was $165,000 per month. News 4 will continue their coverage of the Commission of Inquiry next week.